Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to our webinar today on how to survive in marriage. I am so excited to welcome Kim Bowen. Kim is the founder and owner of the Marriage Place, which is an organization, a therapy practice, but more than that too, really designed to help marriages not only survive, but thrive. I happened to meet Kim at a time I had a lot of clients who were coming to me and they weren't sure whether or not they wanted a divorce. And I'm Jennifer Hargrave, by the way. I'm the owner of Hargrave Family Law. And they were really struggling with the question. And I was looking for resources to help them discern whether or not divorce was right for them. And that's when I met Kim, because her practice group offers discernment counseling, among other things. So as we get started today, I want to highlight a couple of things for you all. First of all, in the chat section, I have a link to themarriageplace.com where you can learn more information about her practice and the services that are available through her outstanding therapists. And also, we have a downloadable guide for you that she's put together. You can locate it in offers, and you can also download it at the link. And I've put a link to my law firm and resources we have available for helping families through this unique period of time. At least we hope it's unique. Kim, I want to turn to you, and as we get started today, you and I were just talking, there are so many jokes and memes going around right now about marriage, things with wives digging holes in the backyard, voodoo tricks, etc. And while there is a lot to laugh at and that can be good, our relationships are under a lot of stress, and I think the humor reflects that stress. Can you talk about what you are seeing in the couples you work with and what is common right now in these unique circumstances? Hello, Kim? Kim? All right, you all, if you will just take a moment, we are having technical difficulties. All right, try.
No, I cannot hear you. I don't know if you could hear me.
Okay, so why don't you log out and log back in? And I promise you all this is going to be worth waiting for because she has a lot of good information for us. So I've asked her to go and log back in. I do want to point out that we have questions down below, and we will be taking your questions. We also have the chat session is open. And it looks like Kim has been able to join us. Can you hear me now, Kim?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. So I just went through the whole introduction, and I was telling everybody about how I got to meet you through the discernment counseling services that your counseling firm offers. Well, I was just saying there are a lot of jokes going on right now about being in close quarters, and this really indicates a truth that our relationships are under a lot of stress. And I was hoping you could kind of share with us what you're seeing in terms of the causes of those stresses on relationships today.
Yeah, so I'm sure I don't have to explain to everybody else what's stressful in their homes. You all are living it, but anything that was bothering you before or annoyed you before about each other, just times that by 100, and that's what we're all dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So, change is hard. Any change is hard. Positive change, hard change, negative change, it's all hard. And so it's just learning how to adapt and adjust and give each other a lot of grace.
I love what you say about grace. What are the ways that we can offer each other grace and hopefully receive it in return?
So one of the things that I'm trying to focus on with my family right now and tell my clients to do is, if my husband doesn't fold the clothes the way I think they ought to be folded, I'm just letting it go. And if somebody is having difficulty with the way the food's cooked or not cooked or whatever, we just give each other grace. And this isn't the time to start pointing out the flaws. This isn't the time to start criticizing how somebody's doing something. And when you feel that urge to do that, it's really your anxiety. And it's about managing yourself and your anxiety instead of trying to push that on to the people that you live with. And so just, accept them as their imperfect selves. If my kids aren't having the best hygiene right now, or they're not, taking care of the things the way that I wish they would, then I let as much of that go as I can.
What, in your opinion, is the best way to handle some of these stressors? People are losing their jobs right now. We've got obviously a huge upheaval in schedules and routines. What advice do you give your clients when it comes to handling stress?
So worry is a big problem for our society, like I said, when we're not under a pandemic. One of the things that I encourage people to focus on, and this is hard, I struggle with this, I have to do this daily, is, it's not what happens to you that determines how you feel or how stressed you are. It's how you think about it.
Wow.
So one of the things I always say is pain is a given. We're all going to have pain, but suffering is optional. And so it's realizing that this is tough. Everybody's going through it, and try to look for the things that are gifts in these moments. And they're out there. Conversations that you're going to get to have with your spouse or your kids that you normally wouldn't get to have. Some downtime maybe that's being forced on you. Maybe some different ways of learning to enjoy each other, or hobbies, picking up hobbies. I haven't picked up a paintbrush in I don't know how long, and I've started to try to dabble in that a little bit again. So just look for the positives in it, but also tell yourself, this is going to end. It's going to end. And we all are going to get back to our normal lives at some point. It's going to be an adjustment, and things may be hard for a while, but it's a temporary situation.
One of the things that you brought up the other day when you and I were talking, and I thought it was such a good concept, was the idea of emotional distance. We're so familiar with social distance right now. We know we're supposed to be distancing from other families, but how important is emotional distance, and what is it?
Well, for me, it's a lifesaver. And so emotional distancing, what it looks like in my house is we each have our safe space. And that's a place where we are committed to go to get away from each other. And to kind of do our own thing for a while. If you have small kids, you might have to do that in shifts. You and your spouse can't go and disappear at the same time. But, we each have our place. And when the door's shut, or there's a sock on the door or whatever, it means don't bother. And, we give ourselves 30 minutes to an hour every day of just emotional distancing. Another way that we use that is like I said before, this isn't the time to have some of the hard talks that need to be had. Some people are in really good marriages. And for those, when they're not in a pandemic, and for those, I'm like, talk often, talk as much as you can about everything, and talk often. But if you're in a tough marriage, this isn't the time. This isn't when I would bring that stuff up. And so that's again, another example of emotional distancing. I make mental notes. This is going to be handled, but not now. I'll deal with this later.
I think one of the important things I've had to learn is to not take my partner's need for emotional distance personally, right?
Right.
Is we all have different styles and different needs for how much distance that we have. And just because he needs time away, maybe when I don't need as much time, or maybe it's flip-flops, and it's not really something to take personally or sign of a bad marriage, right?
That's right. And then again, your partner may be the opposite. They may need some real focused attention time. And so I think that that's important to make a priority as well. People, if you talk to a marriage counselor for very long, they'll talk to you about date nights, I guess, at some point. And even when you're in close quarters like this, it's important to set aside some time. That's especially for you and your beloved to get away and have a minute, whether that's taking a walk by yourself outside, whether it is going in your bedroom and shutting the door for a bit. I had a client tell me one time that they would tell their kids, they were younger, that they were going in to have a Bible study. So because they knew, and they were like, you're welcome to join us if you guys want to come and pray and read the Bible. And the kids were like, yeah, y'all go right ahead. So they got their alone time that way. But it's important to just kind of keep those kind of moments set apart and special. It's so easy to be in our sweats all day long in our pajamas, and every day is just like the day before. And it helps to try to keep some semblance of structure or routine. And so I wouldn't be too strict about it. I mean, lighten up on some things, but your mornings are different than your nights, your afternoons are different than your mornings. So
I heard, I have a friend, and she and her husband did a formal dinner night on Facebook, and it was really cute. They dressed up, they prepared a full meal and did the table, and just to give, make it feel like old days when you used to have company over, but they did it for themselves, and it was really sweet.
I love that. I love that. Picnic in the backyard, turn on some music and dance together. I mean, make it fun.
Yeah. Is it possible for marriages to become stronger during this stressful time?
I love that question. It's possible for you individually to become stronger for sure. And that will create a stronger marriage. Let me just say it that way. So learning how to let things go, learning how to approach your partner in a different way so that you can reduce some of the tension or the hostility in the room. Learning what to say, how to say, and when to say it. And you'll get that feel with your partner. I mean, I know how to go in and take my partner off with just one word. So, I also know how to do the dance to, okay, I really want this to be heard. And it's just practicing how to do that. It's going to make you a much better partner over time. We're on the battlefield. We're in the trenches now. This is like marriage therapy on steroids. I mean, we're all getting a chance to practice the things that we know that we just haven't taken the time to do before.
Okay, you just said something that I think is a huge shift, because I know for me, in times like this, it's so easy to look at my partner and see all the things that he's doing wrong and tell him all the ways he should be doing it better to strengthen our marriage, right?
Yes.
But you just kind of blew my mind with a point there that it really isn't about me trying to make my partner a better partner. It's about me becoming a better partner.
Absolutely. One of the things I think about why partners struggle and why they fight so much. I mean, it's my job. I think about that all the time.
Me too.
And it really boils down to, I mean, at the end of the day, you can call it a lot of things, but what it boils down to is we're trying to change each other, or we're trying to change our partner in some way. We may not, I mean, some people really have a problem with people seeing things differently than you do, disagreeing on something. Right now, I've heard people talk about they're very frustrated with their partner because maybe they think that all this stay-at-home quarantine is a really, really big deal, but their partner thinks it's this is just the flu. Get over it. And so they're having these big fights about something like that. And it's when it's important, then what do you do when you disagree? Right?
Right.
So,
what do you do?
What do you do when you disagree? So if I want pizza and my partner wants Chinese, we're like, okay, we figure out how to negotiate that, right?
Right.
But on the big things, we give ourselves all kinds of reasons why, well, my way matters. What I think about this really matters. It's not okay to disagree. And the truth is, it really is. It's learning how to talk about it. And it's, when you've got a partner who, for instance, thinks going outside might kill people, and you've got one who thinks it's no big deal at all, err on the side with the least consequences.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Like I win then.
Do what?
That sounds like I win.
Well, maybe you do this time, and maybe you don't. And so it's kind of like, marriage is a partnership. We forget that. It really is a team. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just about, I want to be heard, I want to be right, and it has to go my way. It's about, what do I need to do, say, behave, act, feel, that's going to make this unit function better?
One of the things that I think, as I'm thinking through this, because my feeling about being right, about not going outside really has to do with my idea of how to protect my family, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when he's wanting to go outside, he doesn't think it's a big deal. And I'm not saying that's true. He actually does. We do see eye on that. Um, but what's at stake is the idea of how we protect our family. And if we have a conversation about how we protect our family, then we can actually have a more productive conversation than I'm right and you're wrong.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody says they want more intimacy. Well, not everybody. I know a lot of men in particular that really run from that. But there's two aspects to being a good partner, and this is where you can practice. In this time together. And one is your delivery. Make sure that you're clean, what we call about being clean. I'm going to say what I want to say, but I'm going to say it respectfully and with the proper tone, body language, all of that. That's not going to escalate something. And I'm also going to be a good receiver. And a good receiver is somebody who, when my partner has an opinion or expresses an idea, even if I think it's outrageous, even if I'm insulted or upset or mad, I'm going to react in the way that I'm, going to give my partner the best chance of hearing me. And that's where the practice comes in.
And what a great opportunity we have to practice over and over and over again, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And here's the thing too, I want to tell everybody, you're going to blow it. You're going to blow it. And when you do, give each other grace and make quick repair. And what I mean by quick repair is coming back together and saying, gee, I really blew that. I'm so sorry. Let's try that again. Let's have a do-over. My family, we call it do-overs. Let's have a do-over. But you add tired, hungry, not feeling well, worrying about money, worrying about losing jobs, and you've created the perfect environment for blowing it. So,
what are some things that you recommend in terms of structuring a good kind of healthy home right now during this time?
So I think about what is required to be healthy, to be in a healthy home. And you want to have a healthy body and a healthy mind and a healthy emotional state. And so for all of that, you've got to have good nutrition, good sleep, enough hydration, good water intake. I mean, those are kind of the basics for physical. But you need to get in a good headspace. And I don't know how everybody does it, but everybody has their own way. Some people meditate, some people pray or journal or have a Bible study, but center yourself, get in a good headspace, read an inspirational book or something that kind of pulls you out of the stress of the day, and then socialize. You still have to socialize. It's an important part. We are created for connection. And so get on a Zoom call. I meet with my friends. We have a glass of wine and a plate of cheese, and we just we Zoom and we talk about, all the things that we want to talk about. And so it helps. It helps to keep us strong.
Can you talk for a minute about some relationship disaster points, like things you definitely do not want to be doing in your marriage right now? So I'm throwing that at you. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I'm sure you see a lot of couples who come in with some really bad patterns in place. And how do we identify those, and what can we do to kind of help turn that around?
Yeah. So lists of things that partners do that are bad for the marriage.
Yeah.
How long a list do you? How much time do we have? How much time do we have?
The top common things that can be easily changed. We may not even be aware that we're doing that, and it's repeatedly giving a bad result to the marriage.
Okay, so I'm going to bring a personal example in here.
Okay, get real.
Yeah. So if my husband's watching, just turn it off. So I have a tendency when I'm stressed. I mean, we all have things about us that are strengths and overuse their weaknesses. We know that. And so I tend to be very task oriented and driven and can accomplish a lot. That also makes me critical and controlling and judgmental of other people. My husband's like, is it okay if I just sit down and rest a minute? Like, what's on your to-do list? Joking, laughing at me. And so it is being aware that that's my edge. And that's how I show up when I'm in an unhealthy state, whether I'm stressed, tired, hungry, not feeling whatever's going on for me. That's my go-to, and being aware of it and giving my family permission to call me out on it, even with humor, has been a big difference. Like nothing like giving your kids ammo like that, but my kids are like, Mom, your OCD's coming out. You need to kind of get it in check,
Yeah.
and that makes living together a lot easier.
There's something I've noticed when you can have a posture about being open to feedback and asking people for feedback, right? I mean, you really want to know how you're impacting your loved ones. Ask them.
That's so brave.
It does take a lot of courage. They're usually pretty happy to tell you exactly what they think of you, but no, that's great. And some other things that you see in terms of just like usual bad habits that can be changed.
You want to talk about sex?
Yes, of course we want to talk about sex. All right, let's talk about sex.
All right. So one of the bad habits that I see a lot is when one spouse, I mean, this is so common. We call them the higher desire or the lower desire spouse. If you're in a marriage,
they find each other, right? They tend to get married.
I mean, every daggum time, like it's just amazing. And people, they come in and they're like, my spouse doesn't want sex as often as I do. And I'm like, okay, so now we're ready to work. Like, this is just everybody. Not pressuring the spouse to have sex that doesn't, want to have sex at that time. Sometimes, and I try really hard not to get gender specific on the whole topic of sex, because we think that men want sex more than women, and that's not always true. I mean, about half the time I have women coming in and they don't, they want to have sex more. But there is one thing that men do that women, I hear more about it, that it pretty much is gender specific, and that is. If you have kids in the room, just kind of, put your headphones on. I don't know. Men tend to come up and they express that they want to have sex in a physical way, but they grab body parts. Like, I've never known a woman who's sitting there standing at the sink doing dishes, and her husband comes up behind her and he's like grabs, her breasts, and that she likes that. I've never known a woman who likes that. And I asked this guy one time, I'm like, she's told you so many times that is so not okay, and you do it. And he said, well, it's low hanging fruit. And I just was like, okay, wow. Yeah. So it's knowing how your partner likes to be approached.
Yeah.
And knowing how they don't, and respecting that. Because when you start approaching with a physical touch like that, your spouse starts to pull away at all physical touch. And then you lose those moments of cuddling and hugging and hand holding. So I tell them to respect those boundaries. But if you're the spouse that wants to have sex more, negotiate it. Don't worry about it's not sexy. I want my spouse to want me. We can talk about all that all day long, but while you're in quarantine, negotiate it. And if you're the spouse that doesn't want to have sex, what I want to say to you, first of all, I'm doing a course on sexual desire differences that's coming up. I will sign up for that. And then the second thing I want to tell you is it is your desire for sex is your responsibility. It's not your husband's, or it's not your wife's. It is your responsibility. And so you're going to have to figure out what's going on inside of you that's causing you to not want to have sex. And that's where a good therapist comes in.
You mean I can't just blame the other person? Come on.
You can. You absolutely can. Get some body armor.
When you say negotiate sex, what does that mean? Are we talking about how many times a week it's doing, or like what exactly? What do you mean by that?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
It's kind of come to a meeting of the minds that this is
this is important to me. If I'm the one that wants sex, listen, babe, this is important to me. And I get the feeling it's not that important to you, but this is what I would like to have happen. And that person on the other end of that can be very much like, wow, that's a lot. I don't think I want to do it that much. Or, let's talk about that. And then what can you do to make it easy for your spouse to say yes? What can you do to make that easier? That's a common negotiation tactic. If I want a yes from you, what do I need to give you to get a yes? Right.
That is very good information. Do you have any other advice for us when it comes to sex? And by the way, people, remember we have questions, so you can send in your questions. No need to be shy. Kim and I are telling all here, so go ahead and join us.
So sex, there's so much. I mean, that's just hours and hours. If you're having a problem, listen, most people at some point in their marriage have trouble with sex. It's supposed to, it's idealized as this great thing for marriages. And easy to do. I'm hearing feedback, so I don't know.
Yeah, I am a little bit too, but just go on.
but anyway, sex is often very complicated at times. And so I do think that if you're struggling, it is something you want to look at and you want to dig into and you want to work on. But maybe not right now.
Maybe not right now.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've talked about is in a good marriage, how to strengthen that marriage. And certainly sex is an important part of that. But people came into the pandemic in a not so good place in their marriage. And so I want to switch and talk a little bit about that. What advice do you have for people who are in a broken marriage?
In a what?
In a broken marriage, in a struggling marriage.
Yeah. That is tough and can be very exhausting and difficult and scary even. I mean, we're hearing reports of domestic violence increasing exponentially. If you're in a marriage where you're feeling alone or disconnected, my heart goes out to you. I felt like I was in a marriage like that for a really long time. My husband felt like that for a really long time. And I highly encourage you to get some help with that, even in the quarantine, if you can. The Marriage Place, we're doing online sessions. Might be a good time to start taking a look at that, even individually, if your spouse isn't so interested in doing that. We're also doing group sessions online. We're starting next week for groups that people can hop on and get some help that way. It is, it's a tough time. And depending on your situation is the difference on advice. If you're with a volatile person where it's not safe for you to really talk about what you're thinking and feeling and wanting, then I would emotionally distance in that situation. I would do anything I could to just keep the situation level and calm until I could get out. If you're in a situation where there is abuse, active abuse that's going on, get out, get your bags packed and walk out the door and leave. And that sounds easier, I know, than it is to do. But there are still shelters open accepting women who are been in abused homes. There's people that will help you do that. The National Domestic Violence Organization has text and phone in options for you to get some help. If you're just in one where you're feeling lonely and disconnected, now might be the time, but it is safe to approach. Now might be the time to say, I'm feeling really lonely and disconnected. We tend to voice our disappointment as complaints instead of wishes. And so I tell clients every complaint is a wish in disguise. Drop the you never, you always, you won't, you haven't, and start asking for what you want. Come from a different place. Come from a place of softness and vulnerability instead of anger and blame, and see if that gets you a better response.
Oh, wow. That's That's some good advice there. I will say, if any of our viewers today know of anyone who is in a violent relationship, there are resources available. Our courts are still hearing emergency orders, so we can certainly help, at least give guidance and direction as to where to go and what kind of a safety plan to have. But Kim, tell us a little bit about how you do marriage therapy when we're all under a quarantine. What does that look like?
When we're under quarantine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does it look a little bit like this? I feel like maybe I'm getting a little therapy session here today.
Yes, I had a session early this morning. I've got one later this evening. It's good to try to find some time alone that you can get away from the kids and to shut some doors and get some privacy. If you can't do that in the house, I tell them, go sit in your car in your driveway. Yeah. We give them a Zoom link. It's really easy. You just click a link and there you are. And it's a lot like this. I'm seeing either one of you, if it's individual, or two of you together. And it is just like face to face. I mean, it works really well. And I really had some therapists on my team who struggled with that, didn't want to try it, felt like I want that personal connection, but they're enjoying it. I mean, it works and it's effective.
Yeah, that's great. Now, in addition to marriage therapy, you also do marriage coaching. What is the difference between therapy and coaching?
It's a good question. So therapy is a licensed clinical therapist who has the education and the training to do that work. And they also work with other types of pathology. So there might be trauma from past. It might be depression, anxiety, some type of personality disorder. And a trained therapist can work with all of that. My coaches are also, we certify them, we train them. They get the same training that my marriage therapists get. And they work with individuals on marriage and relationship issues only. But they are, people talk about how there aren't a lot of really good marriage counselors out there. I don't know if you've all heard that, but it's kind of a thing in our profession. We're all trained to be individual, and you put two people in a room on a couch and we're like, all of a sudden we're couples therapists, and that's just not cutting it. That's not true. And so at the marriage place, we spend about 2 hours a week getting specialized training on relationships, and my coaches do the same. So they can work on marriages. They just don't deal with the pathologies that come along with it.
Good. And I mentioned at the very beginning of the broadcast, you weren't on, but we were talking a little bit about, I met you because of my interest in discernment counseling as a way to really help couples get clarity about their situation. What is that, and who is that for? And are you still offering that service?
Yeah, we do. And in fact, we offer it as its own subset or specialty, but in traditional marriage therapy, almost every couple I work with, somebody will get frustrated or they lose their motivation to work. Mm-hmm. And then we just slide right into discernment, even in those moments. So discernment counseling basically is helping, it's usually one partner who really wants to work on the marriage and one who isn't so sure. And so it is taking some time and space to deal with that indecision and trying to help them come to one of three choices, which is to leave the marriage, work and change themselves to improve the marriage, or to leave things the way they are, which is what got them in therapy to begin with, because they're in so much pain. But guess which one most people choose the most often?
To work on the marriage? To leave the marriage?
No.
Nothing.
To leave it the way it is.
To leave it the way it is. That's interesting.
Isn't that shocking? Yes. And so, because leaving scares them.
Yeah.
Right. And there's so many consequences to that. And changing themselves scares them. It's hard work.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
They'll choose to leave it the same. They'll go away, and then they'll come back a few months later and they're like, yeah, that's not working. Like, I know.
Yeah. It's so difficult to make any changes. And I think that's probably one of the things that's so difficult right now is we're all forced into this huge upheaval in our lives, right? And
Yes.
nothing is familiar. And so it can be a sad and lonely time. You have such a great story. So we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit, Kim, about your work and what got you into this and your motivation.
Sure. I'd love to tell my story because we got through it. There was a time in my marriage when, my husband and I we really did. We had one of those marriages our friends talked about. It's like, I used to joke, I married Jesus. Like the guy was just so attentive and sweet and cherished me in a lot of important ways. And then I just noticed I viewed our marriage as the one that died of 1,000 paper cuts. It's like, it wasn't one big jarring event that, we were like, okay, we're done, or I'm done. It just was over time. We took a lot of things for granted. It was so easy for so long that I stopped worrying about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember looking at him one day and realizing, God, I don't even like you that much. Like, I really wow. And I really did believe and said to him, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And what I meant by that was, you're a good dad. You've been a good husband. I have fond feelings for you, but I don't want to have sex with you. And I don't want to partner with you this way anymore.
Hmm.
And it was really hurtful for him because he did not feel that way. And in his pain and desperation, he did all the wrong things to try to convince me to stay in the marriage. And the more he did, the further I wanted to run. And so we ended up, a lot happened in our lives. We had to, we moved houses and our kids changed schools. And in that process, we stopped focusing so much on the relationship and we just started trying to deal with our life. And in that shift, I started to look at him a little differently again. And he started to realize, okay, wow, I'm seeing more of the person that I used to know. And through that kind of push and pull going on between us, we figured out that when one spouse wants out, that does not necessarily mean it's the end of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
All the therapists we went and saw, they were like, yeah, it's over. You can't make somebody want to be in a marriage they don't want to be in. Or they would say something like, if your spouse doesn't want you, why do you want them? Like, move on. But we didn't. We stayed and we fought through it. And we're celebrating 30 years in May.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. And I love him, more than I ever did. And so that's when I decided I had this strong desire to put a different message out there about love. We're getting so many screwed up messages around it, and we base it on feelings instead of commitments, and feelings come and go. They come and go. I'm happy to base them on feelings if they lasted. They don't last. And so, you have to decide what your priorities are and what your commitment is. So
I think that's really wise. And I know a lot of people right now are feeling, in close quarters or maybe feeling in these close quarters that I like, there's nothing sexy about you right now. I don't want anything to
That's exactly right. And Jennifer, that's really an important thing. Once we start to have an unpleasant or negative view about our spouse,
mm-hmm.
what we expand on grows. And so if we feed that, if we don't put that in check early on, then our spouse will get to the point where they can't do anything right. We'll get to the point where they can't do anything right. And then now they're seeing our response to them and they're starting to develop their own sets of feelings about us. And now you've got a really toxic cycle going. It's really important to understand that if you're unhappy, our tendency is to blame our spouse for our personal unhappiness.
It is totally, completely.
It is. I'm feeling unfulfilled. I must be in a bad marriage. I'm kind of losing myself. I don't love my spouse. I don't find my spouse attractive anymore. The marriage must be over. And none of that's true. That's just my feelings at the moment. And most of the things in our lives are about our belief system. And sometimes we need to change that belief system. We can't change our spouse. I can't.
So are you telling me if I change my belief that the spouse who I'm not finding very sexy right now, if I like tell myself over and over again, okay, he's sexy, he's sexy, he's sexy, will that change it? Is it as simple as that, Kim?
Well, it's where did you get the idea of what's sexy and what isn't sexy?
Right.
And challenge that idea. My husband told me one time, hadn't been married very long. I didn't know anything about what men found attractive or what, how that all worked. I mean, I was just kind of like, whatever, and really young. And I said, how does a man find a woman attractive who's gained 100 pounds? Or how does a man find a woman attractive who's had a mastectomy and lost her breasts? And John said, well, it depends on the man. He said, I can focus on the thing I really like. And that's what I see.
Yeah.
And it's a mind shift. It's so where did you get your belief system around what's attractive? And maybe it's time to challenge that.
Oh, that's so good. Change your focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what he was telling you, is it's what you focus on. And if you can focus on the good things and the positive things and the connection and pouring into your marriage, you can change your marriage.
Yes. And like my husband's ADD, we talk about this a lot. It makes it hard to live with him sometimes.
Yeah.
And I can focus on that and feel like I'm raising 3 children instead of 2, or I can be like, what's the point? He's going to forget it anyway. And then you kind of get to this one-up position of, he's so hard to live with. Like, I'm not so hard to live with. And my husband's like, can we talk about yours for a minute? Like, can we make a list of what makes Kim hard to live with? And that is really humbling.
It is. Yeah.
And so these people that like to point their fingers at their spouses, like, wow, I've lost attraction for them. I'm like,
Yeah. You're giving up too soon, perhaps. So I think this is so great. I want to thank you so much for taking time. I don't see any questions. Everybody maybe is a little too shy to ask, but that's all right. They can ask you questions when they pay for your time.
That's right. They need to charge you.
So go see Kim at the Marriage Place. If you want some resources, I mean, marriage therapy is not just for marriages in trouble. This is a really good time to focus on strengthening marriage. And of course, if you know anyone or you have questions about how the current crisis is impacting maybe your current custody orders, we would love to visit with you. And thank you, Catherine, for your comments, and thank you, Nicole, for your comments. We appreciate your feedback. But this has been really fun. So click on one of the links above to learn more about Hargrave Family Law or to learn about the Marriage Place. And you all will get a copy of this recording. And Kim, any final words you want to leave us with? Any messages of hope or whatever?
Your home should be the safest place in the world.
Mm.
Do your part to make it so. Love each other. Be good to each other.
I love it. Thank you so much, Kim. And we're going to stop the broadcast now, but thank you all for joining us and sharing the message. Take care. Bye.